In Matthew chapter 24, verse 33, "So also, when you see all these things, know that it is near, at the doors. Let us examine these signs carefully and see how ancient prophecies are being fulfilled today. May this be a time of revelation and preparation for all of us." Biblical prophecies have been a source of fascination and study for centuries. Let's start with the words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 24, verses 7 and 8. "For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." Here, Jesus is not just talking about random events. He is warning us about a pattern of global turmoil that signals the beginning of the end times. Consider what has happened in the past few decades. We have seen wars on all continents from World War II, which destroyed on an unprecedented scale, to more recent conflicts like the war in Syria and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. These events echo Jesus' prediction of nations rising against nations. Besides wars, Jesus mentioned famines and pestilences. Think of the food crises that have plagued various regions of the world. Africa has been particularly affected, with millions facing hunger due to droughts, conflicts, and poor governance. In terms of pestilence, the COVID-19 pandemic is a clear example. This global pandemic, which began in 2019 and still has devastating effects in 2024, is a reminder of how quickly diseases can spread and cause mass suffering. Now, let's talk about earthquakes. According to the United States Geological Survey, the frequency of significant earthquakes has increased over the past 50 years. Major earthquakes in Haiti, Japan, and Nepal, to name a few, have caused large-scale destruction and loss of life. These events align perfectly with Jesus' warning about earthquakes in various places. Another crucial point is the prophecy of Daniel in chapter 12, verse 4. "But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." We live in an era of unprecedented global travel and communication. Planes, high-speed trains, and the internet have allowed people to move and communicate in ways that were unimaginable just a century ago. Additionally, the increase in knowledge, especially in technology and medicine, has been exponential. During a visit to Jerusalem, an archaeologist told me about recent discoveries that corroborate the historical accuracy of the scriptures. He showed ancient inscriptions that predicted future events so specifically that they could only have come from divine inspiration. The rebirth of Israel as a nation in 1948, foretold in the scriptures, is a clear example of how prophecies are being fulfilled. This event, predicted in Ezekiel chapter 37, verses 18 to 28, re-established Israel and re-established Israel and placed the country at the center of world events, just as the prophecies suggested. Let's look at the signs we see today and how they align with biblical prophecies. In Luke chapter 21, verses 25 and 26, we read, "And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and the stars, and on the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them from fear, and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken." First, think about global instability. Nations are in constant conflict, both militarily, economically, and politically. The increasing tensions between major powers like the United States, Russia, and China are alarming. Trade conflicts, territorial disputes in the South China Sea, and election interference are examples of how nations are at odds. In addition to international conflicts, we are seeing an unprecedented increase in natural disasters. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States, there has been a significant increase in the frequency and intensity of hurricanes, wildfires, and floods. Hurricane Katrina in 2005, the earthquake and tsunami in Japan in 2011, and the devastating fires in Australia in 2019 and 2020 are clear examples of these catastrophic events. These disasters are not just isolated tragedies, they are signs that draw our attention to our relationship with God and the world around us. The moral decline is another sign predicted in the Scriptures. Paul wrote in his second letter to Timothy, chapter 3, verses 1 to 5, "But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come, for men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power." Paul encourages us to turn away from these people, but calls us to recognize these behaviors as signs of the end times. Let's reflect on our modern society. We live in an era where materialism and selfishness are often celebrated. The media, movies, and music often promote behaviors against Christian teachings. Sexual immorality, violence, and the idolatry of money are glorified. Social media, although having many benefits, has also contributed to a culture of narcissism and superficiality, where appearance is valued above character. A clear example of moral decline can be seen in the family crisis. Divorce rates are at alarming levels, and many children are growing up in broken homes or without the presence of one parent. The institution of marriage, which is sacred in God's eyes, is being redefined and attacked by various ideologies that seek to distort God's original plan for the union between a man and a woman. In many parts of the world, traditional family values are being abandoned in favor of a culture that values personal satisfaction over commitment and responsibility. Additionally, we have seen an alarming increase in violence and crime. Headlines are filled with news of mass shootings, terrorist attacks, and murders. Respect for human life seems to be diminishing, and cruelty is becoming increasingly common. In some cities, organized crime has taken over entire neighborhoods, leaving citizens fearful and helpless. This escalation of violence is a clear sign of the moral decline predicted in the Scriptures. Corruption is also rampant in many governments and institutions around the world. Scandals involving politicians, business people, and religious leaders are becoming increasingly common. Pursuing power and profit at any cost has led many people to commit dishonest and immoral acts, harming millions of innocent people. This corruption directly reflects Paul's greed and love of money in his letter to Timothy. Another aspect of moral decline is the growing acceptance and promotion of behaviors condemned by the Scriptures. The ideology of gender, for example, has caused great confusion and division in many societies. The Bible is clear about the creation of man and woman in God's image. Still, this truth is being challenged by movements that seek to deconstruct biological distinctions and promote a relativistic view of gender identity. The desecration of the sacred is also a troubling sign of moral decline. We have seen direct attacks on religious freedom, where the expression of the Christian faith is being suppressed in the name of tolerance and political correctness. In many places, Christians are being ridiculed and persecuted for standing up for their biblical beliefs. Churches are being pressured to conform to cultural norms instead of standing firm in the truth of the Scriptures. Let's now reflect on another notable prophecy, the prophet Daniel. In chapter 12, verse 4, Daniel writes, "But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." This passage describes our time, where technology and human knowledge have grown unprecedentedly. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world saw the invention of the aeroplane and the automobile, revolutionizing how we travel. Today, we live in the information age, where the internet and social media connect billions of people in seconds. International travel, which was rare and time-consuming, is now common and fast. We can move from one part of the world to another in a matter of hours, something that would have been unimaginable for past generations. The rapid advancement of technology also raises questions about privacy and control. With the development of advanced surveillance systems and massive data collection, legitimate concerns exist about how these technologies can control and monitor people. In Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 to 18, we read about the mark of the beast, a system where no one can buy or sell without that mark. Although we have yet to determine exactly how this prophecy will be fulfilled, it is worrying to see how technology can be used to impose such strict control. Another aspect to consider is the ethics of biotechnology. Advances in genetic engineering have the potential to eradicate hereditary diseases and improve the quality of life. However, there is also the danger of genetic manipulations that could alter the very essence of human life, raising questions about what it means to be human. We must remember that we are created in the image of God, and any attempt to enhance this creation must be done with great care and reverence. Another prophetic aspect that deserves our attention is the prediction of the rise of a world government. In Revelation chapter 13, verses 7 and 8, we read about a beast that receives authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation, and how all who dwell on the earth will worship this beast. This passage suggests the formation of a unified global government under centralized leadership. In the 21st century, we are witnessing a growing movement towards the centralization of power in international organizations. The United Nations, the European Union, and other supranational entities are gaining increasing influence in global politics. These organizations were created to promote peace and cooperation among nations and raise questions about national sovereignty and the potential for excessive centralized control. The COVID-19 pandemic, for example, highlighted the need for a coordinated global response. The World Health Organization played a central role in coordinating response efforts to the pandemic, and we saw how international decisions affected billions of people's lives. This situation shows us how a unified global government could emerge in times of crisis. The growing economic interdependence between nations also contributes to the centralization of power. Globalization has created a complex trade and finance network connecting all parts of the world. Economic decisions made in one country can have significant repercussions in other countries. This economic interdependence can be a tool for cooperation, but can also be used to exert control and influence over smaller, more vulnerable nations. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 23, we read about a fourth kingdom that will be different from all other kingdoms and devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. This prophecy can be interpreted as the rise of a global power that will exercise control over the whole earth. Although we have yet to see the complete formation of a world government, the movements towards the centralization of power are signs that we must closely observe. These global changes remind us that we are living in prophetic times and need to be spiritually prepared. We must remember the words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 24, verse 42. "Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." May we be vigilant and firm in faith, trusting that God is in control and will guide us through these challenging times. The Bible also speaks of times of great economic instability. In Revelation chapter 6, verse 6, we read about a time of scarcity and economic imbalance. "And I heard a voice in the four living creatures saying, 'A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine.'" This passage describes a period of extreme inflation and economic hardship, something we are beginning to see in our world today. Since the global financial crisis in 2008, the world has faced economic challenges. The crisis was triggered by the collapse of the subprime mortgage market in the United States, leading to the bankruptcy of major financial institutions and the need for massive government bailouts. This crisis resulted in economic recession, job losses, and financial instability in many countries. More recently, the COVID-19 pandemic brought a new wave of economic instability. Many businesses closed, millions lost their jobs, and governments worldwide had to implement unprecedented economic stimulus packages to avoid economic collapse. The impact of the pandemic is still being felt, and many experts warn of a slow and uneven recovery. Inflation has also been a growing concern in recent years. Prices of food, energy, and other commodities have risen significantly. In many countries, living costs are rising faster than wages, putting significant financial pressure on families. This price increase directly reflects biblical predictions of scarcity and economic imbalance. Furthermore, global debt is at historic levels. Governments, companies, and individuals are borrowing at record rates. According to the Institute of International Finance, global debt surpassed $300 trillion in 2021, an increase of more than 30% in just a decade. This growing mountain of debt represents a significant risk to global economic stability and could lead to future financial crises. Jesus warned us in Matthew chapter 24, verse 11, that many false prophets will rise and deceive many. We see this prophecy fulfilled before our eyes. The proliferation of false prophets and religions is one of the clearest signs that we are living in the last days. These false doctrines lead many to the truth and cause great spiritual confusion. A notable example of this religious deception is the prosperity gospel movement, which preaches that Christian faith is a path to material wealth and perfect health. This teaching distorts the true gospel of Jesus Christ, which calls us to deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow Him. In many cases, the leaders of this movement accumulate great wealth while their followers remain in financial hardship. This type of preaching focuses on material blessings rather than eternal salvation and spiritual growth. Additionally, we have seen the emergence of many new religious movements and sects that deviate from biblical teachings. For example, the Church of Scientology, founded by Ron Hubbard, is a controversial religion that has been accused of abusive practices and deceiving its followers. Another example is the New Age movement, which mixes beliefs from various religions and esoteric practices, promoting a spirituality often contrary to Christian teachings. Social media and the internet amplify the voices of these false prophets, allowing them to reach a global audience easily. People seeking spiritual answers can easily be drawn to these deceptive messages. This is why we must be firmly rooted in the Word of God and carefully discern the teachings we hear. In his first letter, John warns us, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." 1 John 4:1. This advice is crucial for our days. We must test everything we hear against the Scriptures and seek the guidance of the Holy Spirit to remain in the truth. We are also seeing the growing acceptance of occult and esoteric practices. Interest in horoscopes, tarot, and other forms of divination has grown significantly. The Bible clearly condemns these practices, but they are being promoted as harmless forms of self-knowledge and guidance. This is a dangerous deception, as it leads people away from the true source of wisdom and guidance, which is God. Another troubling example is the infiltration of non-biblical doctrines into traditional Christian churches. Some denominations are adopting teachings that contradict the scriptures, such as accepting immoral practices or denying fundamental truths of the Christian faith. This is causing division and confusion within the body of Christ. In Revelation chapter 2, verses 18 to 29, Jesus warns the church of Thyatira about tolerating a false prophetess named Jezebel, who was leading God's servants into immorality and idolatry. This warning reminds us today that we must be vigilant against any teaching that deviates from biblical truth. Dear brothers and sisters, we cannot speak of biblical prophecies without considering the central role of Israel. The scriptures are clear about the importance of Israel in the last days. Ezekiel chapter 37 speaks of the valley of dry bones, a vision that symbolizes the restoration of Israel. In verse 11, God tells Ezekiel, "These bones are the whole house of Israel." He promises to bring the bones to life, cover them with flesh and skin, and put His Spirit in them. This prophecy was fulfilled in 1948 when Israel was re-established as a nation after nearly 2,000 years of dispersion. Since its rebirth, Israel has been at the center of world attention. The small nation has been the target of conflicts, peace negotiations, and ongoing territorial disputes. This attention is not accidental. It is a fulfillment of biblical prophecies. Zechariah chapter 12, verses 2 and 3 tells us, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling to all the surrounding peoples and Judah when they lay siege against Jerusalem. And it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all nations of the earth are gathered against it." The modern history of Israel is a living testimony to these prophecies. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel captured East Jerusalem, including the Temple Mount, a site of tremendous spiritual significance to both Jews and Muslims. This event rekindled the dispute over the control of Jerusalem, which continues to be one of the main points of tension in the Middle East. Additionally, Israel has faced constant threats from its neighbors. Iran, for example, has repeatedly declared its desire to destroy Israel, developing military capabilities that alarm the international community. The conflict with the militant group Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, results in frequent armed confrontations and bombings. These conflicts reflect Zechariah's prediction that Jerusalem would be a heavy stone for all surrounding peoples. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Romans, chapters 9 to 11, discusses the future of Israel in God's plan. He emphasizes that God has not rejected His people, and that in the end times, all Israel will be saved. In Romans chapter 11, verse 26, he writes, "And so all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come out of Zion, and He will turn away ungodliness from Jacob." This is a reminder that God still has a special purpose for Israel, and that we should observe events in Israel as signs of the times. The importance of Israel is also evident in the Abrahamic covenant, which God made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, God promises Abraham, "I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." This covenant is eternal and still in effect today. In Ezekiel chapter 38, verses 18 to 23, we read about a coalition of nations that will rise against Israel in the last few days. This prophecy is known as the War of Gog and Magog. Many biblical scholars see this as an indication that there will be a great battle involving Israel before the second coming of Christ. The current tensions in the Middle East and the alliances between nations that oppose Israel can be seen as preludes to this prophetic event. Another prophecy that is becoming clearer daily is global communication capacity. In Revelation chapter 11, verse 9, we read about 2 witnesses who will prophesy during the last days. When these witnesses are killed, their bodies will be seen by peoples, tribes, languages, and nations for 3.5 days. This would not have been easy to imagine just a few decades ago. How could people worldwide see something happening in a specific location simultaneously? Today we live in the age of the internet and social media. Any significant event can be broadcast live to a global audience in seconds. News, videos, and images circulate the world in real time, allowing millions of people to see and respond to events instantly. This fulfills the prophecy that people from all nations will see the bodies of the 2 witnesses. Initially created for military and academic purposes, the internet has become an essential tool in our daily lives. Platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram allow people from different cultures and languages to communicate and share information instantly. This global connectivity is something that previous generations could not have imagined, but it is a reality for us. In addition to social media, live news coverage by television and news websites is another example of how global communication has become ubiquitous. Remember the September 11, 2001 attacks. The images of the planes crashing into the Twin Towers were broadcast live and watched by millions of people around the world. This event and many others were seen in real time by a global audience, which would have been impossible without modern technology. This global communication capacity is significant in the context of biblical prophecies. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 14, Jesus said, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." The internet and communication technologies have allowed the gospel to reach parts of the world that were previously inaccessible. Missionaries and ministries can share the message of Christ with millions of people, breaking down geographical and cultural barriers. On the other hand, this same technology can be used for evil. The internet amplifies the spread of false information, cyberbullying, child exploitation, and other forms of wickedness. We must be vigilant and use these tools wisely, always discerning what is true and edifying. As Christians, we are called to be light amid darkness, using technology to spread God's love and truth. In Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, we read that, "Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." The multiplication of knowledge is evident not only in communication, but also in scientific and technological advances. We live in an era of constant discoveries and innovations, from medicine to space exploration. This acceleration of knowledge is an additional confirmation of biblical prophecies. We must recognize that these innovations are part of God's plan for His gospel to reach the ends of the earth. However, we must also be cautious and discern how these tools are used. We must pray for wisdom and divine guidance in all our lives, including technology. Jesus warned in Matthew chapter 24, verse 9, that they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and all nations will hate you for my name's sake. Persecution of Christians is a reality that has been constant throughout history, but today we are seeing an alarming increase in various parts of the world. According to Open Doors, more than 340 million Christians face high levels of persecution and discrimination in over 50 countries. In North Korea, for example, Christianity is seen as a threat to the regime, and believers are severely punished. Many are sent to concentration camps where they face torture, forced labor, and even death. In Nigeria, the terrorist group Boko Haram and Fulani militants have systematically targeted Christian communities, resulting in thousands of deaths and forced displacements. Churches are destroyed, and Christians live under constant threat of violence. The situation is so severe that many Christians are forced to flee their homes and seek refuge in other countries. In China, the communist government has intensified its crackdown on Christian churches. Unregistered churches are shut down and shepherds are imprisoned. The government uses advanced surveillance technology to monitor and control religious activities. Christians are forced to meet in secret, often at great personal risk. These examples are just the tip of the iceberg. In many Middle Eastern countries, such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, conversion to Christianity is punishable by death or long prison sentences. Christians in these countries face systematic discrimination and are often deprived of basic rights such as employment, education, and healthcare. This global persecution is a clear fulfillment of biblical prophecies. In John chapter 15, verses 18 to 20, Jesus said, "If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember what I said, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also." We must remember to pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide. We have reached the end of our video, and I hope you like it. If you're looking for inspiration, knowledge, and spiritual connection, don't let this opportunity pass you by. Subscribe to our channel now, leave your like and comment to strengthen our community. And if you want to help us continue sharing religious stories that touch hearts, become a channel member. Together we can make a difference and strengthen our spiritual journey. We're counting on you. We've left the link in the description of this video so you can become a member today. Continue watching videos about the history of the Bible. I will leave 2 recommendations here on the screen. God bless you. We will get to the next video.